Hello, welcome. Hello, Katya. Welcome to another industry news show. Well, welcome to us both.
Hello. Hello, happy Friday.
Happy Fridays, and thanks everyone for watching. We've got quite a busy show, quite a lot to get through, haven't we, this week? A lot has happened.
Yeah, been another busy few weeks for the cannabis industry.
We're going to be talking about Dalgety and Grow, who've joined forces, the Newstatesman coverage, Times article, changes to the MedBud Wiki, an academic publication which talks about barriers to accessing cannabis in the UK. We're going to talk about the Home Office potentially, maybe, possibly backing e-prescribing, the Guardian's recent call out to patients to come forward with police experiences, the very much discussed online FSA slashing of the CBD recommendations, and Medical Cannabis Awareness Week, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It's a lot of stuff, a lot of things going on. It went quiet for a while, didn't it? And I think we said this on the last show, and suddenly there's lots of things going on, Katya.
Yeah, it's picking up again. Nice to
Everyone
be
goes away.
nice to be in the swing of people actually just being at the desks and working.
It's good to see everyone back at work. Stop slacking. All those people at conference day. Right, cool. Let's talk about. Should we talk about Dalgety and Grow? Do you want to give us a bit of a?
Yeah. So Cannabis Health article came out yesterday, saying that Dalgety and Grow are joining forces and going to be bringing UK grown product to the market, which is exciting. I guess Dalgety have kind of stayed quiet for a while until they're kind of fully ready to go, which is always nice. I feel like a lot of companies make a lot of noise without having a facility or anything or a license. So it's always good when people just stay quiet and make noise once they can actually like deliver something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely like very needed because there's limited product consistency and problematic supply chains in the UK. Lots of, patients feel the front end of that. So I think there's a real hope for UK supply to deal with that and bring in, consistent, high quality products to patients. I guess it is worth mentioning that in the article, there's nothing that mentions cost as far as I'm aware. Nothing around whether costs will be lower, because I think amongst the patient community, there's definitely an expectation that cost is going to go down, and with it being grown in the UK, there's an expectation like, well, it's not getting shipped from like North America or from Portugal, so it should be lower. But yeah, I don't know if that will be the case, as it's not mentioned in the piece.
It's going to be the key thing, isn't it? Cost is going to be the really interesting part of that. Me and you have spoke for a while in different forums and arenas about our hopes for like UK cultivation and that being quite an important milestone. So it's a good thing to see, isn't it? It's a good thing to see happening, and fair play to both those organisations for getting in there and potentially being the first to supply it in the UK. But yeah, cost is going to be an interesting element of that, particularly from a patient perspective. Let's see what some of those costs come out at. Hopefully it is a service which is quite quick. We talked, haven't we, about one of the barriers when we've done many of our what are the barriers, what are the factors that are holding back the UK medical cannabis market, and we talk a lot about supply, don't we? Speed of supply.
Yeah, supply is key, especially when you're competing with the illicit market amongst like a lot of patients. So yeah, no doubt it's really, really positive news. I guess it'll be interesting to see what that looks like in action.
Definitely. So fair play to those two groups. Good to see.
Yeah.
Press watch. Press watch. We should have a little theme tune for that, maybe. Maybe not. Not with me singing it. There was coverage in the Newstatesman, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was around like painkillers and how many people. I think it's over 1 in 10 Britons use painkillers every day. Yeah, I think it was a good piece of coverage. I think everything in that article was quite sensible. Yeah, not sure how much of like a news story it is.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it is
certainly
news. I think people are starting to realise that the technique for a lot of cannabis clinics to get backlinks or for PR companies to validify their costs is to secure regular press coverage, and I think there's definitely a trend of a bunch of clinics, Mamedia being one of them, where there's a lot of press releases that just go out month after month after month after month with sort of headlines like this and stats and doing kind of like surveys. I always find it weird because when we've done surveys and stuff in the past, we've used like YouGov and Survation and stuff.
Yeah.
To kind of show that it's a valid survey and it's done properly and it's a proper study as such, and therefore the data can be trusted. But I always find it a little bit ropey if the survey is just from the company. It's like, oh, we did a survey.
So, okay, did you make it up? Did you make up the results?
I'm not saying that's what happened here, but it is, yeah, I find that like, I don't know, journalists, it's a bit weak sometimes, I think, when it's just like, okay, yeah, sure, I mean, you've done your own survey.
Yeah, like it usually has to be through like an academic paper or a YouGov or Survation poll, so...
And over a certain like a certain sample size, you probably want like 2,500. I mean, what was this from 2070, which isn't awful, but it is always interesting to get it through an actual polling company. But yeah, this is quite common now, isn't it? It's quite common to see PR companies we get them every now and again through Volteface for the website. People just pitching out stories and articles which really are about getting trying to secure backlinks companies and just try to get some space.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a trend.
We'll one day wake up to it, because I've seen a few this year. I saw a lot of journalists being like, "God, there's a lot of cannabis press releases at the moment. Like, is anybody else getting loads of these press releases?" It's just these PR companies just spamming out like story. And I guess the other thing me and you have talked about is how valuable that is. Good for SEO if you can get some backlinks in there, and there's definitely a big SEO war at the moment between the clinics as to who's getting those top searches. Definitely worthwhile for that.
I guess with all of this, it's kind of a question is like, who's actually reading the Newstatesman? Who's actually reading the Times? Like, I mean, we did, when we spoke to Middlesex Uni this week, when we talked about press and, stuff that's happening in the cannabis industry, no one was like, oh yeah, like, no, I haven't seen those articles. Like, I was like, oh, did you guys hear about like that Sadiq Khan, crisis last year about cannabis? And everyone's like, no. So I do sometimes wonder, like, it's probably just us that's, on media watch, whereas the general public probably isn't.
Yeah, we've had that in focus groups too, haven't we? Where people have been like, we've talked about, the campaigns in 2018, there's all this media coverage, and then being like, I didn't really see anything. Like, what?
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
Yeah, but I feel like mainstream media and our thoughts around that's for a different podcast.
Yeah. We'll pack that one there. I'll do the next press one, then pass over to you, because this article really annoyed me. There was a Times piece, why is the NHS giving out so few cannabis prescriptions? And it was just like, it's so smart. It's such a short. There's so much you could talk about here. It's almost like a ChatGPT thing. Like, there's so much you could, as a journalist, there's so much you could write about, and so many interesting perspectives that you could get, and
so many people you could have spoken to, so much interesting stuff that's like happened in the industry, and it didn't go into any of that.
It's just like a nothing. It's just a nothing article.
Yeah, I think did it mention GW Pharma? Was that just an imagination? I feel like it just mentioned some really random, like
it might have mentioned GW
pieces that like didn't actually really link to the cannabis industry. I don't know. Maybe I'm just imagining that.
Or maybe it didn't. Either way, it was pretty awful. So much to talk about, and they just kind of whiff an article. And also, most people would have read it anyway because it's behind a paywall, which is another hilarious thing.
Exactly.
People share it on Twitter and they're just like, interesting article. I'm like, have you actually read it?
It's like, have you got a Time subscription? No. So there's changes to MedBud coming. MedBud Wiki did a tweet the other day saying that they're in discussions and there's going to be some major changes to their platform. They haven't released what that is exactly, but I know that they've been in discussions with the MHRA for a while, and I imagine they'll have to make some changes to how, like, in what form they provide the information, and there being a lot fewer things shown.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely something around marketing regulations and the legality of having medicines essentially advertised on
Yeah.
a
Yeah. I
website.
feel like MedBud have always been in an interesting position because they're obviously non-profit. They have like no commercial interests, and I feel like that always plays into like advertising regulations. Like the
Yeah,
MHRA don't want a company kind of showcasing their product for people to be aware of it and purchase it, whereas like MedBud, like their sole focus behind all of that is just they want patients to be more aware, and
yeah,
it's coming from like an advocacy point of view. So I think the MHRA understand that, but they're also like, you can't really be doing this.
yeah.
So I imagine the MHRA are in a situation where they don't really know what to do either.
I hope it continues as a website in a similar form because it's great.
Yeah, it's
It's
such
a
a
good resource.
useful,
Really hope
such an
it.
amazing resource.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. Next on our list is an academic publication around the barriers of UK medical cannabis access. Quite a mouthful. Sorry, my headings are like getting longer and longer. Very, very serious. Yeah, I thought this publication was really interesting. And I think it just summarized where the UK medical cannabis access is at, like really, really well. Good piece of literature, and always just nice to see something that's not just like in the medical cannabis echo chamber and like an academic publication in a journal. And yeah, made some really sensible points, especially around like health inequalities related to cannabis prescribing. And yeah, nice they mentioned that there was significant improvements in like mental and physical health amongst participants with very few side effects. But like that aside, there's still so many barriers to patients being able to access cannabis. Like funding streams are really problematic. There's supply problems. Police aren't on board with it. Doctors aren't on board with it. And I thought it was interesting. And this, I guess, links to one of the other things that we're going to talk about in a second around like, even though there's a prescription, like a legal prescribing pathway, there's still ongoing criminalization amongst legal cannabis patients. So yeah, I think it just like laid the land around what the current framework looks like really well.
Really
And hopefully
comprehensive
that,
piece. Like it was just a
yeah,
good,
yeah,
solid,
it
comprehensive,
just
like
clearly,
journal.
unlike the Times article, they've actually like really done their research and understand what's going on.
Yeah,
So yeah, shout out to the authors. I thought it was a great piece, and hopefully that builds momentum and interest amongst the academic world and hopefully the clinical world, because they are linked.
definitely.
Yeah.
Next up, Home Office approves backs. Be careful with the wording. E-prescribing protocols. Drugs Minister Chris Phillip backed ACMD advice on proposals from NHS England to allow e-prescribing of cannabis-based prescribed medicines and other Schedule 2, Schedule 3 drugs. The government will now consider what practical steps and legislation are required to enact the change. It's definitely a good sign, isn't it, that they're willing to kind of consider this and look at it, because a lot of people that we've spoke to and very, very aware in the
Yeah, it's
industry
like
that this is an issue.
it's a big issue, and it's quite like a boring issue. Like no one's that
Yeah.
interested in it because it just
People are
means
like, oh my god, it's outrageous. Like we've got to
yeah,
keep
like
it as it happens. It's like such a practical thing.
it's not like one of the sexier topics in the cannabis sector. But I mean, it's a really important and annoying thing that isn't allowed at the moment. Because even though all these clinics are operating digitally, they have to print and post prescriptions to the pharmacy before they're able to prescribe it, which is just so backwards given like for everything else you can just send it electronically. So hopefully if it goes through, it means that it's just like another thing that allows cannabis prescribing to operate like other unlicensed medicines.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, do you want to do this one? Guardian?
Yeah,
The
why not?
Guardian?
So yeah, the Guardian has put out, I mean, I think a lot of people will have seen this. It's been quite shared around lots on Twitter. But they've put out a call out for medical cannabis patients to come forward and share any experiences they've had with the police, which I think comes off the back of lots of reports online that countless patients have shared around just awful stories that patients have experienced where like police have seized their medication when they're like a full-on legitimate legal medical cannabis patient, and clearly shows that there's just a massive lack of education amongst police forces, like not even knowing that it's legal or not knowing like how to check and ensure that prescription's legal. So yeah, really like important initiative and definitely one worth investigating. And it's just quite nice that the mainstream media are like catching on to this and interested in it.
Yeah, there's some awful stories that we've seen and read recently, haven't there, of people having the medication taken. It's just it's appalling, really. Just goes
Yeah.
back to the things we talked about with known unknowns, that the stigma that exists in the clinical community, it still exists in the criminal justice. I mean, this is no surprise to anyone, but it still exists within police forces, just like a complete lack of understanding. But that's
Yeah.
also reflected in just patients' interaction with restaurants, festivals, just
Yeah,
taken
pubs.
put into areas
Yeah.
where you absolutely should be allowed to use your medication. But as soon as they're like cannabis, flower, no, you're not allowed. And
Yeah.
essentially those groups put themselves in really ropey ground with regards to rights and
Yeah.
access to and safety. Like, there's people that use medical cannabis and it has a huge quality of life impact on them. They need it to manage their condition. And this idea that, oh, just go without it. Just go without it. It's that's completely illegal to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are
Like if
some
you,
really positive stories at the same time, though. There's people being like, "Oh, I took it into the festival. The security were great. They totally understood that, no problem at all." But also, I mean, that should be everybody's experience. It's not,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but I think
med-
there's also like there's police that will like stop patients and then show their medication. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I think there's like whether a police officer is like fine or not fine with it. I think they just don't really know how to deal with that either way, and it kind of just depends on who you get stopped by. And even ones that are supportive, probably like odds are they don't actually know how to check whether it's a legal prescription. They probably just look at the tub and they're like, okay, there's a lot of like words and numbers on here. I guess they're a legally prescribed patient. So yeah,
people should definitely follow that through though and speak to the guardian. It'd be good if they took this seriously and kind of looked at it and examined it. It'd be very
yeah,
important.
yeah.
This was a big one. The FSA slashing the CBD recommendations. And now this was
Yeah,
last week. Was it last week? Yeah. What we're doing? Yeah,
last
last week.
week. Yeah, not yeah, I think
Not
we're
ideal.
yeah, not ideal. I feel like as we're going through the show, the stories just get worse and worse.
We had one ray of light in the middle, which is the potential backing of prescribing. Although, see what
Yeah, and
happens.
that was like potential, maybe, possibly.
Potential, yeah, it's definitely a good sign, but also,
Who knows?
the government say a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the
Yeah, this is not
CBD industry
great.
is I think in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, the
mean,
recommended limit from 70 milligrams to 10. I mean,
yeah, and like,
10 milligrams.
proven efficacy varies. There's loads of different studies, but like, it's a lot. It's even higher than 70. Like most of the high street CBD things, like the amount that's in the can or like the whatever you're drinking has like barely any CBD to actually even have an effect. So now the FSA dropping it even more, like, is just ridiculous. I don't. Yeah,
But
I don't know what the.
just to challenge it though, do you not think that CBD has ridden a bit of a wave of people not really understanding it for a while? Because like, I've had people be like, "Oh, you can get those CBD drinks down." This is not to say that there aren't some great companies doing really cool things with CBD and drinks, and like, I'm not bashing the drink or the company or the vision, because I see it as a good thing. But I mean, there's such small quantities and amounts that the idea that that's going to have any meaningful impact on someone is pretty slim to none. Yet the
Yeah.
public have been like, "Oh, I've got my coffee with a CBD drop in now. That's amazing." Or what was that thing that Alistair posted that went viral? And it was like, "Enough is enough." It was something absolutely ridiculous that had like CBD in. Do you know what I mean? Was it shampoo?
Yeah, like I've
Shampoo
seen
with
like CBD
CBD.
hummus and
Hummus, that
CBD
was it. Was hummus.
chocolates.
It was CBD hummus. But I just think the public has kind of gone along with this like bit of a fairy tale with CBD and not really
Yeah.
understood
I don't
that.
think, yeah, no one understands it, and everyone thinks like, oh, like, yeah, CBD wellness. I mean, it has done a really good job of like reframing cannabis, although I think people think cannabis and CBD are like totally different things. But it has helped with that whole like wellness and like
Yeah.
health aspect to it. But with the recommendations now, I do just worry, like, I feel like it's going backwards and it's painting like the opposite picture for the general public. Like, oh my god, if you consume too much CBD, you'll have thyroid and liver issues. And it's like, will you though? Like,
Yeah.
I guess like with the guidance that it's put out, a lot of people have been making the comparison to like alcohol unit guidance that like, you know, NHS is going to say, you shouldn't consume more than like 14 units a week, and you know, you shouldn't have more than like 4 units a day. But do people exceed that unit? Yeah, like all the time. So I think it's a guidance, but I think because people don't really understand CBD and it seems a bit mystical and weird, people will probably go ahead and like want to follow that guidance. But how that will be enforced.
Look, the point that you have up there,
Yeah.
you know, this announcement shouldn't result in product being taken off shelves, but
Holland have taken
30 products. I mean, because that's the other thing to consider here, isn't it? It's not just the public; it's the stores and the shops' perceptions of what the public want and what they even want to be selling on their shop floors. So it's not a ideal move from the FSA, and I feel like their involvement in the CBD industry from the beginning has just kind of like created a lot of barriers and problems and stresses and pressures. But then there's another part of me that I kind of like. I kind of don't want people getting ripped off with CBD. I'm fairly divided. I want the CBD market to do really well. I want it to flourish. I want like innovation and good ideas and to come to the forefront. But at the same time, I want people to be able to buy and get products that do have good efficacy and data around them, and they do take them and it improves their quality of life. But I just don't see how products which have such low levels of CBD in, and if people start kind of following the FSA's recommendations,
well, I'm not feeling anything. Yeah, I feel like it's going to become a vicious cycle where the FSA have put up so many barriers. People are going to follow the advice, and then CBD is not going to work, so people aren't going to buy CBD, and then everything's going to go downhill.
Yeah. Well, good luck with CBD. You know, we hope that it doesn't. I guess it also depends like how big the press run that sort of story and how much it gets round and how big a deal it becomes. The FSA just kind of say it and do a press release and people are like, all right, yeah, okay, fine, and then the world.
Yeah, I mean, it got some coverage in like the Guardian and a couple of pieces, but again, like we mentioned earlier, like whether people are actually reading that, whether people have seen it, who knows? We see it because all our alerts are like cannabis and CBD.
Yeah, but I reckon if I went to Georgia or like surveyed my friends, you seen the CBD stuff? Like very few. Oh yeah. Oh man, FSA, what big news that was. Just not engaged in it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going through this at a good pace, Katya. I'm happy with this. This is good punchy.
Yeah, I don't even know how much time's gone by. There's no like timer on
23
here.
23 minutes exactly.
Wow. Good
Boom.
for us. Yeah, very punchy.
Go us. Medical Cannabis Awareness Week. You'll flag that.
Yeah, that's coming up in 2 weeks' time. I think it's the last week of October, first week of November. There's quite a lot of stuff going on as always. There's the Cannabis Industry Council meeting. There's the patient conference on the Friday. So lots to get involved in. I don't know what the protocol for Medical Cannabis Awareness Week is. Like, happy Medical Cannabis Awareness Week.
Happy Medical Cannabis Awareness Week. I hope everybody
share this with a friend that could benefit from cannabis-based medicines.
We're looking forward to the patient conference.
Yeah, that's always I say always fun. There's only been one, but it was really successful last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in one space again.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I guess I feel like Medical Cannabis Awareness Week is always a weird. It's like because it's the anniversary of the law change, and then it's like, oh, it's another year of like not that many patients and not that much awareness.
Yeah.
It's always like a happy and a bittersweet time for the industry, I feel.
Yeah, there are still ongoing challenges out there from last year to this year, and there's still a lot to do with regards to awareness raising in the UK. It would be great to get some insights from all the clinics as to their numbers, but we know that accuracy.
They never like to. Yeah, they're all like, we're the biggest cannabis clinic in the UK.
Yeah. Oh, everybody is cool.
Yeah.
It's good. I feel there's been progress year to year. I feel like there's more. When we did the Middlesex talk, 50% of the room knew they could get a medical cannabis prescription by
Which
private
isn't too bad.
healthcare, which is a lot more than I thought it was. So maybe that's a sign that like it is slowly starting to penetrate,
especially amongst the younger community. I'd say.
Yeah,
people are just more open and like interested in drugs. I'd say so.
Yeah,
they're probably just more aware of it.
Feels like a positive-ish note to end on, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, we've turned it round.
We saved it at the end.
We've turned it round.
We saved it at the end. Thanks, people watching. Let us know what you think. With Twitter, we're putting it on Twitter and YouTube and LinkedIn and all the usual places. We'll be doing this every other week, or unless something happens which we think, oh, we need to do a video straight away on that.
Yeah, a crisis video. We'll have
Breaking
to
news.
assemble the troops.
Breaking, capital S. Cool. All right, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time, and take care.